You know, I first heard music for 18 musicians in the 1970s. I can't even remember when I first heard it. It was just, it's kind of been there in my consciousness for a long time. And then there was drumming, and at a certain point there was clapping music. And I remember Steve was coming to San Francisco, and I remember he and I had corresponded a little bit, and eventually we had a meeting. And at that meeting, he said, you know, I really don't write string quartet music. I mean, it's just, you know, it's just not the kind of thing I do. But, you know, you could play for Vermont Counterpoint. So he sent me a score to Vermont Counterpoint. And one thing I don't do is play flute music. So that just didn't work, you know. And but I had an idea. And so Kronos was playing a show once here in San Francisco. And I thought, why don't we open the concert with clapping music? And so that's what we did. We opened with clapping music. But what I didn't know would happen is that if you clap that long and you're not used to it, your hands are going to swell up. Well, that's what happened. At least to me, my hands got all swollen up. And the next piece on the concert was by Shostakovich. And you need, you know, you can't play with swollen hands, at least not the way you'd like to play. So anyway, after the show, I wrote to Steve and I told him we had just played his first string quartet, clapping music. And eventually we were going to be out in New York. And in fact, we were doing Terry Riley's Salome Dances for Peace at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. Well, Steve brought Georgi Ligeti to the concert. And so I'd never met Ligeti before, and so that was great as well. And by this point, I think Steve had accepted a commission from Betty Freeman to write for Kronos. And eventually that piece became Different Trains. And I mean, there are a few pieces that I know of in the history of the string quartet repertoire that have changed the approach to what a concert can be as much as Different Trains did. And here's some of the ways it changed Kronos' concerts. We realized very quickly that in order to really play the piece the way we needed to, we were going to have our own sound engineer. And so what happened is it created an entirely new kind of circumstance for our tours. We needed to have 5 people on tour. And what that began to allow us to do was to work with the sound of our concerts. We could create reverb in places that were really very dry acoustically. We could begin to do other pieces that were written for live quartet and backing tracks. We could bring all sorts of elements into the concert. And so over the years, the influence of Different Trains on our concerts has just grown, actually. And so it's when I think back on the influence that piece has had on our music, it's enormous. And you know, it's interesting. It's being played by many groups. I've even seen that the orchestras have played Different Trains, and it's the same with triple quartet. And so, you know, eventually you kind of step back from that and you see the influence of this music, and so it's not only the music itself, but it's what it requires to play it properly that it has changed Kronos over the years.